Age of War. This game is the first thing that pops into my head when the term Flash game is ever mentioned. There's literally hundreds of games made in Flash, and it would be impossible to only choose one of them to be a general representation of all of them. But if I had to choose, I would argue for Age of War. Funny thing is, I don't think Age of War is anywhere near the best Flash game. In fact, I would say it would likely be bottom half. It just came really early in the cycle. That doesn't stop it from having a legacy that completely outscales the game itself. How many people would consider this their first video game, or at the very least, their first video game memory? How many people do you think were exposed to the ability to make games in Flash by Age of War and then decided that they could also do it? I don't really know. I could very easily be over-exaggerating, but I truly believe that this little project had a measurable impact on the landscape of video games, which is a lot to say about a very simple game. Many Flash games are much simpler than younger me remembered, but simplicity is not a bad thing. I would say that most of the time, it's better for something to be simple than complex. Needless complexity can be annoying. Age of War is a rare case where it's bordering on being too simple. Send guys out to destroy a nearly identical enemy base. 5 eras: cavemen, knights, bowl cuts, army guys, and sci-fi robots. Each era has at least 3 units. Last era has a super unit that's just a stronger version of the ranged unit. When I was like 8, I thought melee combat would be a viable way to fight in modern warfare, entirely because the army guy here is using a knife. Each era also has a special. Meteor Shower reskin, a very weak aura, the military industrial complex, and space lasers. None of this matters though, because turrets are the strongest thing in the game. Units can die, turrets can't, making them a far better investment of gold. I remember the strongest turret being able to beat the game by itself. The enemies line up, the turret gets firing, and the excess shots hit the enemy base. Turns out I was a coward, because that's only possible on the lowest difficulty setting. This time around I've played it on the middle difficulty, and while the turrets can still damage the enemy base, it's far too little in far lower frequencies. Saving up and sending super soldiers is faster. I don't think I need to go into that much more detail. There isn't much I can get into. Simplicity is the correct word to describe this game. If you word it more negatively, you could call it barren or lacking content or something. But I'm under the idea that Age of War would be many people's first video game, and for something like that, a simple introduction is perfect. Of course, there's the music. There's a comment on the Glorious Morning YouTube video that says something like, 50% of what made Age of War great was the music. I disagree, it's 60%. Louissi, the dev, made a lot of Flash games during his time. Age of War was one of his earlier works and the most recognizable. It's a real shame because I would say a lot of games he made after Age of War are better, but none of them are as known. Even its sequel, Age of War 2, is only known by a fraction of the amount of people. Fun fact, this game got into an almost legal dispute. More on that later. There's more stuff to do here. 4 main unit types: infantry, support, armor, and anti-armor. The anti-armor is the only new type. The other 3 were in the first game. Each era has a locked unit in which you have to buy a certain upgrade to unlock. This upgrade panel is now a thing. Gold no longer scales for some reason. Like, the costs of the units across the eras are pretty similar. A caveman costs the same amount as a spider robot. The same thing is applied with gold gained on enemy kill. The eras are a bit different. It's now caveman to Spartans, to Egyptians, to high fantasy Europe, to a bunch of colonizers, to a COD lobby, to far future sci-fi. EXP is still needed to advance between the eras, but the special attacks of each era now cost EXP to use, meaning it's not worth using the specials of earlier eras. It's a lot better to save up EXP to evolve and only use the last era's space laser. Enemies can now also use their own specials. I don't think you're able to hit the enemy base with them this time, but turrets are still the strongest thing in the game. I would say that Age of War 2 is generally better than Age of War 1, although I don't like the art style of Age of War 2. This might just be me being more accustomed to the art of Age of War 1, but I think many of the units in 2 look a bit too exaggerated. The art is pretty good. I just don't think this goofy style is really fitting. I like goofy stuff, just not in this case. I think a serious, in quotation marks, style is better, and that's exactly what we got in the third game, Army of Ages, the one that attempted some radical differences. We are no longer fighting other humans. An alien meteor landed and took over the enemy cave as a nest. Thankfully, even though we're just cavemen, our guys can keep up with the aliens until the moment they start evolving, in which case humanity also evolves. We go from cavemen to knights to toy soldiers to regular soldiers to mechas. In Army of Ages, we don't summon units. We have 6 slots for buildings. Each building by themselves will send out certain units. Each era has more than 6 buildings to choose from, so you can't get everything. Half of the units are going to go by air, and like actual war, air superiority is crucial. Also, every era has water collectors. Water is the thing that generates gold in the caveman days and the mecha days, apparently. Turrets have been nerfed heavily. They're now placed on the field and can be destroyed. You also can't place turrets past the halfway point of the map, meaning they won't see much total use. The money and EXP system is the same as Age of War 2. The money doesn't really scale and you need EXP for both specials and evolution. One difference is that you can now use EXP for specials of any era, even if you advance past them. The Aero Rain ability from the medieval era is way stronger than any other special, entirely because it is built to take down air units and anti-air stuff is really strong. Evolving to a new era is awkward. A weird loading screen appears and all your units and turrets are poofed out of existence and the aliens charge. I panicked at first, but they also give you an absurd amount of money, so I just bought 6 new buildings of the era and we were right back to neutral. The music, while not being Glorious Morning, Army of Ages was made years after the first 2, and the man wanted to make something new. I appreciate the dev trying something different from the previous 2 games. All that being said, the major issue of Army of Ages is that it kind of just plays itself most of the time. After you make the first 6 chosen buildings, you don't really do that much. You don't really place turrets as they aren't worth it, and you don't really use specials as you save up to evolve. You just watch the fight. I like the idea surrounding it, but I think there was a misstep in the execution. There's a strange story on why this game isn't called Age of War 3. Louissi got into an almost legal battle with Max Games. Bunch of stuff happened and he ended up not being able to use the name. Publishers will be publishers no matter the scale, I guess. Well then, that's the trilogy of Louissi's most well-known games. He made a lot more. This is kind of short. The rest of this video is going to be a lightning round overview of a bunch of this guy's games. I mean, he coded in all of them, but some of the art were from different people. Armor Mayhem, a 2D Quake-like. Pick up weapons and fight. This was built for multiplayer. The single player mode is just a bunch of multiplayer games, but you play with and against computers. Earth is out of resources, so humanity travels to a different planet and finds an infinite energy source, and then they start fighting. I mean, if it's infinite, by definition, you don't really have to fight for it. There's enough to go around literally forever. This is perfect good fun, but the AI is dumb, so get a group of friends if you can. I do find the killstreak announcer funny when you get like 10 takedowns in a row or something. This game may have got some people into arena shooters. Armor Mayhem Chronicles. It's the sequel. The graphics are better and the weapons are a bit different. Gameplay is mostly the same as before. Very polished up and has all of the classic FPS game modes but played in a 2D pickup weapon style. I can say that this is one of Louissi's best games. Smiley War, most definitely one of the older games here. It's also a 2D Quake-like and likely an early iteration of what became Armor Mayhem. Much more chaotic and you can't really tell what's going on, as the UI to tell who's winning doesn't appear until the end of the match. Hitboxes are a lot smaller here and aiming is a bit awkward. A slight difference is that ammo and weapons persist between lives, so you can gather up an arsenal if you want. Still fun, but you can tell it's someone's earlier work. Catapult Madness. You ever play Toss the Turtle? That thing spawned a whole genre. A bunch of those games branched out in terms of gameplay and made themselves unique. This game, not so much. The genre here isn't launcher, it's a Toss the Turtle like. Much of what you do is watch the silly stuff happen on screen. You're not as active as you are in other launcher games. Trebuchets are better. It's a fun game despite the downtime. House of Wolves. I think this is easily the best game Louissi has ever made. 2D Age of Empires would be the most simple summary. The Age of Empire inspiration that was vaguely in Age of War is out full force in House of Wolves. You scout the 2D map on either side. The right side has an enemy nation with watchtowers stationed everywhere. Occasionally, the enemy army will try to push into your territory. To your left is a land filled with goblins and giant spiders. You have to fight past increasingly stronger groups of them to gain access to more resources. Use your resources to make stronger buildings to get stronger soldiers, but the stronger soldiers will cost the limited resources to make, and the basic spearmen only cost wood and food. It can work for a surprising amount of time. It's a great game. It can really just sucker you into playing it for a long while. New World, a boots on the ground god sim. I had no idea what I was doing. You can pull up the planet's tectonic plates to change the elevation and temperature levels to plant different types of trees. Evolve animals from worms by paying attention to what the evolved things like to eat. I did not pay attention. I just spammed until I hit the goal. Once nightfall arrives, the undead and short people come out to fight you. The systems are a lot more interconnected than they may seem. It's too bad by the time you figure it out, you already have a random setting going, and trying to organize that would be like trying to optimize the code base written by someone that left the company half a decade ago. Road Z, a survive as long as you can zombie strategy game. You manage your survivors' level and health, gather resources, upgrade your car, and find places to sleep for the night and drive as far as you can. You don't do stuff like craft a long-term base. The screen literally can't go backwards. The standard game mode is endless and there is no story. At later points, the buildings will have barely any loot and tons of zombies in them. Hordes may start to show up, meaning that area is being skipped. Soon, I just decided, screw it, I'll drive until the car gives way. Tower of Doom. Build a tower to destroy the land. Enemies get stronger as you go and you have 4 tower types. A fast arrow tower, a slow but strong fire tower, an ice tower that slows enemies, and the magic tower that does AoE. The magic tower is by far the strongest. It's a fun little half-hour game. You optimize your tower and then you just watch the show for a bit until you win. I am a bit sad that there's no animation for firing the beam. Turtle Girl, a very short game about a girl that dreams about loving her turtle. She is armed to the teeth and is fighting against every single bad guy a 5-year-old child would know about. You have 5 weapons to choose from, but ammo is unlimited, so why would you not use the rocket launcher? Upgrade your weapons by calling over an ice cream truck, and a giant squid is the boss. It's a fun 10-minute game. Well, that's my coverage. This isn't all of his games, just 12 out of roughly 25. Louis Simon Menard seems to have dropped off the face of the internet since 2014, his last ever main game being House of Wolves, so at least he retired his career at his best. He was just a dude from Montreal that started making Flash games when he was 13. He made possibly the most famous Flash game of all time, and yet he's a relative unknown. A lot of these games are still worth playing, and this man has a fantastic record. He hasn't been on the internet for a decade, but he did give his full name and he does have a LinkedIn page. I'm not going to show his LinkedIn, but I am going to tell you that he now works at Unity. I hope he's doing well. Okay, a lot more Flash games to go through, but next will be a different type of nostalgia that I hope some of you may share. Also, I made a Blue Sky and Instagram.